Hey folks, Tommy Yarish here alongside recruiting analyst Mike Roach for Horns 24/7, breaking down the 2023 defensive line class for Bo Davis and the Texas Longhorns. Mike, let's get right into this. 5 signees for the Longhorns, 4 of them coming off the edge. Maybe you could say 3, maybe 4 coming off the edge. Colton Vossen, Darion Gallete, Akana, Sidir Mitchell, and Billy Walton make out this 2023 class. Overarching thoughts on the 5 players that Bo Davis brings in.
I think it was big to get all that edge talent. It was a huge area of need coming into this year, this cycle. I think we saw it on the field how much Texas needed some pass rush presence in the past 2 years, and I think that they've addressed that with some of the guys they got. On the interior, wish they would have gotten a few more numbers, but really like the guy they did get there in Sidir Mitchell. I just think that that position could have probably used 1 or 2 more bodies.
All right, we'll get to Sidir Mitchell here in a minute. I want to start with Colton Vossen, coming from Westlake High School, just about 30 minutes away from UT Austin campus. The Longhorns able to flip him from Oklahoma. How much does that mean for Texas, and what do you expect from Colton Vossen to do for the Longhorns?
It was an absolutely massive flip, not only because you add that talent to your roster, but you're taking that talent away from Oklahoma, where they had him. I love Colton Vossen. I love his potential. He is, to me, an NFL, a future NFL player if everything works out for him. When you look at his frame, how projectable it is, his athleticism, the way he moves laterally. And my favorite part about Colton Vossen is not only the violence he plays with, but the way he uses his hands. He's extremely well coached at Westlake High School. His father, Brian Vossen, a former Longhorn himself, is, in my opinion, one of the better defensive line coaches in the state of Texas at the high school level. We saw what he's done with guys like Ethan Burke, who popped early. And I think that we could expect some of the same from Colton Vossen, who's already on campus, and from what we hear, making an impact in those January workouts. So I'd look for Vossen to be a name that generates some buzz this spring.
Vossen joining his former Westlake teammates Ethan Burke and Michael Tav in Austin as well. So sort of a homecoming for those 3. Always nice to see. Moving on, Darion Gallete up next. This is a guy who maybe some people have forgot about. Sat out his senior season with an injury. Mike, can you just remind us, bring us back up to speed, why Gallete was so coveted and why he was a huge get for Texas?
Well, when you look at projectable traits, athleticism, it is a height, weight, speed game, and Darion Gallete has all of those items. This is a player that Texas targeted off the bat as a linebacker or possible edge player. And you've got to look at what his incredible athleticism and what he brings to the field. As a junior, started both ways on a Marlin team that went to the state semifinals, was a big-time player on the basketball, turned in some highlight reel dunks, showing off some explosive athleticism on the basketball court, and then ran anchor on their 4x100 team that made it to state and competed in several other events at that meet as well. So we're talking about a premium athlete in a big body, around 6'3", 6'3 and a half, 230 pounds, 235 pounds. This is a guy that had, I think, if he hadn't got injured, a lot more people would be talking about him. The funniest thing is I went to go see him at his signing day, and for a guy who has been injured, usually those guys get a little overweight, they get a little chubby because they can't do much. He looked in phenomenal shape. So reports are he enrolled at Texas at around 235 pounds. I think he's going to probably, if he can get fully integrated into that strength and conditioning program, be near 245 by the time the fall season starts. And this is a guy that I think is a primo athlete in a primo size frame that you can play either on the edge or you can put him at linebacker if you need to. I think that there's a lot of versatility there.
Mike, I remember you, me, and Hudson saw him at the Texas Relays, like you mentioned, back when he was at Marlin as the anchor for that 4x100 team. Extremely impressive athlete. So certainly good to see him nursing himself back to full health. Another extremely impressive athlete I want to touch on is Akana, who's up next, listed as a linebacker, but we talked about this before the show. He could be a guy who makes that move to edge if he puts on a little bit more weight. Saw him at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. He was extremely impressive, and we saw him flip a little bit more to that linebacker side and play some there as well. Another guy who the Longhorns were able to pull away from Oklahoma. So that's 2 recruits, not the Longhorns, pull away from their rivals in Norman. What did it mean to get Akana's signature, and where do you see his progression go throughout the first couple of years here?
I think it was a great cherry on top. for Pete Kwiatkowski in this class. They pursued him really hard going down the stretch, and winning him over from Oklahoma, just like with Colton Vossen, not only do you add that talent to your roster, you take him away from your chief rival and don't let them add that talent. Tasili Akana is a big-time player. There's a reason that schools like Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Oregon, Utah, and many others were after him and his recruitment. Now, I think what's going to happen is it's going to depend on what he shows up to campus at. We expected him, I think he played around 220, 225 during the season, showed up to the All-American Bowl around 196, which was pretty shocking to a lot of us. But, as we were reminded by his father, he's Polynesian. He's one luau away from getting back to that weight that we expected him to be at. I think off the bat, he's probably in the linebacker room. He's probably a guy that's playing as an off-ball, weak side linebacker. And I think he can give you some valuable snaps there in year one. I don't think it's a wasted year for him. But ultimately, this is a guy that you depend on to put on that weight, put on that size, and then come off the edge and give you a big pass rush presence. I think that's what Tasili Akana brings. He's an explosive, long athlete. He's very productive, playing at a high level for a state championship team in Utah.
Remind me not to go to those luau's right about now. I don't think I need to be gaining that kind of weight. Next guy I want to touch on is the only interior defensive lineman that Bo Davis brings in, Sidir Mitchell. Mike, we talked about him a little bit earlier. The only guy I know you wanted to see a little bit more. But when it comes to Mitchell, why is he so special, and why is this a guy who Bo Davis really wanted?
Well, when you're talking about the transition to the SEC, the name of the game is play at the line of scrimmage, and you need those big bodies, especially like Sidir Mitchell, in the middle to disrupt what offenses are doing. This is a massive prospect, around 6'4", 6'5", 330 pounds, a guy that I saw at the Under Armour All-American game, who, despite that size, can play with some suddenness, can play with some violence, and can be disruptive in the middle of the field. So I do really love the pickup for Bo Davis. That is a big win to go out of state and get a guy that both Texas A&M and Georgia, two of the finer D-line recruiting schools in the country, were both pursuing really hard. I think that he's an awesome addition for Texas. By the way, he's on campus right now as well, going through those January, February workouts. But I do wish they would have gotten a little more in that position.
All right, we'll keep an eye on Mitchell's progression through spring camp. Last guy we'll talk about here, Mike, Billy Walton, two-time state champion from South Oak Cliff High School. I know you spent a lot of time with the Golden Bears program. You've seen Walton progress from day one. What has his progression been like, and what excites you? I can't find my words. What is so exciting about him, and where do you see potential for more growth?
I think Billy Walton, anytime I'm asked who the sleeper of this class is, my answer is Billy Walton. And because I believe in a couple of different things. When we watched his progression from his sophomore year, I think I met him during the spring of his freshman year at SOC. And he was a skinny, lanky kid that you could maybe, if you squint, you could project him. And he just kept getting better and better. I remember during his junior year, in the middle of their playoff run, en route to their first state championship, that's really when I started to think of Billy as a serious prospect that needed to be paid attention to. He was really good leading that death row defense for South Oak Cliff to a state championship. And then when we saw him his senior year, he just kept growing. It feels like every time I went out there, and I was at SOC, I would say once or twice a month, he was bigger and bigger. He added to that frame, and he started to play with more physicality. That's what his coaches challenged of him, and that's what he gave them. I think he's a guy that can play with his hand down. I think he can play off the edge from a two-point stance. I think you could drop him into coverage. I think there's a lot you could do with Billy Walton. Not only do I love, the athleticism, the frame, all that, I love the program he comes from because he's a guy that's been put through the ringer. He's played 32 games in the last 2 years at the high school level. He's seen some of the highest level talent in the country in front of him, and he's succeeded. He's come up big in big spots. So I really love the potential Billy Walton brings to this team.
Walton joining his high school teammate Malik Muhammad at Texas as well, both coming from SOC. Coach Todd runs a great program over there. Mike, last question here for you. Out of the 5 guys that we have just talked about, who do you think, maybe not in their first year, but just overall quickest, who do you think has the biggest impact earliest?
Well, two names I'll mention. I really like what Sidir Mitchell and Colton Vossen, two guys I talked about who are already in the program, already going through those workouts. Darion Gallete also, in the program going through workouts as well. But because of his knee injury recovery, is not going to be full speed until we get through the spring. So I like the guys who get a head start generally. And those are two guys that I think have big frames, that have big ability, and they're going to be acclimated to it because they're going to go through spring ball. They're going to be in better shape than the rest of the freshmen when they arrive. And I think both those guys will be needed and called upon this season.
All right, wonderful insight as always, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you for giving us a watch here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. For more content leading up to spring camp, be sure to head over to the horns247.com website and stick around the YouTube channel as well. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. We'll be posting more content for the rest of the 2023 class and beyond as well. Thanks again for watching us. For Mike Roach, I'm Tommy Yarsh. We'll see you next time.